All right, it is 6 o'clock, so we are going to get started. Good evening to everyone, and welcome to tonight's virtual town hall on the 2021 Annual Action Plan. My name is Kimberly Garduno. I am the assistant to the city manager, and I help administer programs funded with community development block grant funds. The purpose of today's town hall is to provide an overview of the annual action plan and to seek input from residents to identify priority and program needs such as housing and community development. Immediately after the presentation, we will open it up for questions and comments. Our speaker for today is James Gillian with JQuad. He provides planning and consulting services for our CDBG program and assists city staff with technical reports required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Again, welcome. And James, the floor is yours. I'll go ahead and pull up the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for joining us tonight. As Kimberly indicated, our program will consist of an overview of the Community Development Block Grant Program, and we'll leave time for you to provide input on the program. So if you could bring up the first slide. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Planning and Development Division provides grant to cities, counties, and states in order to address development needs across the country. On the screen, you'll see a list of 6 different program activities that are funded. The City of DeSoto participates in the first item, which is the Community Development Block Grant Fund. And most recently, the city was also able to participate in funding for the Coronavirus Relief Fund, or CARES Act funding. Next slide, please.
James, I apologize. Give me one moment. I actually need to mute.
Okay.
I apologize. I forgot to do that. Okay, there we go. All right.
Can you hear me?
James, we can hear you. We just can't see you.
Hello?
Hey, James. Okay. Looks like we may have lost James. I do apologize. Can you give us one moment? Hey, James. James?
Yes.
Okay, looks like we lost you for a second. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself, and then I'm going to pull up the presentation, but we can hear you, okay?
Very good.
Okay. I'm just going to mute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good then. So the first screen lists information about the congressional appropriation that cities receive. Congress each year allocates funding for the various programs that I shared with you on the slide. The two largest programs that are funded under the National Formula Grant programs are the Community Development Block Grant Fund, which was funded last year at about $3.4 billion, and then the Home Investment Program, which was funded at about $1.35 billion. Total appropriations for all of the 5 programs last year, excluding the coronavirus programming, was about $17 billion, to give you an idea of the national funding for the program. Next slide. For the City of DeSoto, our annual allocation for our current year, which operates between October 1st of 2020 through September 30th of 2021, we received $310,782 for the Community Development Block Grant Fund. We have received an additional allocation for under the CARES Act, or the COVID-19 Relief Fund, which we received $182,823, which was used for small business loans to businesses under the Paycheck Protection Act in order to assist them in retaining their employees. And also we received $249,753, which was used and is being used currently to provide utility assistance to individuals impacted by the coronavirus. I'll give you a little more detail later in the presentation on that. So our total regular funding for the year, including coronavirus, a little over $743,000. Next slide. Federal regulations state that in order to receive and utilize funding under these programs, we must meet at least one of the national objectives that is set forth by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. That means that our funding must at least either benefit low and moderate income individuals, and I'll explain what that entails, has to prevent or eliminate slum and blighted conditions, or it has to meet a need having a particular urgency. That third provision is how we receive funding under the coronavirus pandemic relief fund. Next slide. The federal regulations also limit how we can expend those funds. Only 20% can be expended on administration of the programs. Up to 15% can be expended for public services, and then the remainder of the 65% can be expended on any eligible activity. Next slide. So one of the highlights of the program is that it is a block grant. So once the city becomes eligible for the funding, it gets to decide, based on community input and the council's priorities, how the funds will be allocated. So those funds that we have identified can either be used to assist with community facilities, it can pay for community services, it can pay for infrastructure improvements, neighborhood services such as code enforcement and other activities, special needs like senior services, youth services, and homelessness. It can also provide funding for economic development and job creation, and then finally housing. Again, it's a block grant, so with input from the public, the City Council has the opportunity each year to determine how and at what level of funding it will fund the particular activities that it deems priorities for the community. Next slide. In order to invest the funding that we receive, it can be invested based on an individual benefit, or it can be invested as an area benefit. If we structure programs that are intended to benefit individuals, that individual and their household must meet the income requirements that the federal government mandates. Under this particular program, the household income based on household size cannot exceed 80% of the area median income for Dallas County or our particular metropolitan statistical area. For our current year in 2020 funding, the median income, 80% of the area median income is $86,200. And for a family household size of one, that means that their annual income cannot exceed $48,300 in order for the individual or their household to participate in a program. And you can see, based on family size, that increases based on the number of persons within the household. An example of this type of funding being applied will be the Transportation Assistance Program that I'll talk about a little later, in which individuals are able to receive a stipend for transportation to essential services. The other way in which we can invest the funds is what's called an area benefit, and that is in any particular census tract in the city of DeSoto where 51% or more of the persons within that census tract earn incomes at or below that 80% of median income, the city can make benefits or programs to address the needs of everyone within that census tract. Examples would be sidewalk, curb, gutter, alley improvements, things that would not necessarily benefit just one individual or one individual household, but would benefit everyone within that census tract and, in some instances, the city as a whole. Next slide. In order to receive funding, the city is obligated to create what's called a strategic plan to outline how it plans to utilize the funds, what the city's priority needs are, and how those funds will help address those needs. So once every 5 years, we create a 5-year strategic plan, which is called the Consolidated plan. And then when Congress allocates that formula grant to each city, then we apply the funding that we receive under what's called our annual action plan, in which we identify specifically how we will use the funding. So that $310,000 that I identified earlier in the slides that we received for October of last year is being allocated based on that 5-year strategic plan, and then the annual action plan outlines the different programs that will be funded. Next slide. To give you a graphic illustration of the process, if you start on the right-hand side where it says the housing market analysis, the city is obligated to develop a strategic plan in terms of how it will use the funds. So we must demonstrate statistically how those funds will benefit persons who are low and moderate income within our community. The housing and market analysis helps us to establish the housing needs of the community. We establish the housing and homeless needs through an assessment of need in that particular area. We identify any barriers that people are having in order to access housing rather. A monitoring plan which demonstrates how the city will ensure that those funds are being invested as per the regulations. We create and complete certifications demonstrating to the federal government that we both have the ability as a city to carry out those programs and that we're committed to carrying those out. Those constitute our strategic plan. The annual action plan provides the city with the funding. Funding is applied to the various programs, and the citizen participation plan allows you as citizens to give us input as to what those priorities are and what programs you'd like to see funded. Next slide. To give you an idea historically how those funds have been invested, the City of DeSoto first became an entitlement community in 2015. And we first produced a consolidated strategic plan in 2015 that provided direction for the program for the 5-year period of 2015 through 2019. At that time, the City Council established as the priority needs code enforcement, alley reconstruction, and transportation assistance, which became one of our priorities starting in 2017. From 2015 through 2019, those were the program activities that the grant funds were invested in. Next slide. Then in 2020, the city developed its second consolidated strategic plan. Again, we went through the process of defining analytically our needs as a city. The City Council established the priority needs. And for this 5-year period, which started in October of 2020 and will go through September of 2024, the priority needs that have been established are housing rehabilitation, which was added, housing assistance, which would provide assistance to first-time homebuyers. They maintained the transportation assistance program and then added public services, a focus on mental health services as the 4 priorities that we would follow for the next 5 years. Next slide. So as you see on the slide in front of you, it includes assistance to homeowners for emergency repairs to their home. I'll describe that a little later. Housing or home buyer assistance to persons who are purchasing their first home as a first-time home buyer. The transportation assistance program was maintained. And then you see an example of the alley reconstruction project, which enhanced alleys within the city. And that particular initiative ended last year. Next slide. So for last year's funding, so that you get an idea of how those funds were invested, our program year began October 1st of 2020, and it will end September 30th. 15% of our funds were directed towards public services. We provide emergency repair assistance at 32% of the funding, $101,000. Housing assistance is our down payment and closing cost program at 33%. And then administration constitutes 20% of the total $310,782 that the city receives. Next slide. In addition to our regular community development block grant funds, as I indicated earlier, we did receive funding to assist in providing relief under the CARES Act for persons impacted by COVID-19. We received funding for under the Paycheck Protection Small Business Loan Program that allowed businesses to receive assistance to retain their employees in their workforce. That was funded at $182,823, and we were able to assist a little over 40 businesses with that program. We're currently administering a utility assistance program in which persons who are either delinquent or having difficulty paying their water and sewer bills are able to receive assistance with those bills to avoid disconnections. And we're funded at $249,653 for that particular program. Not included in that $432,476 is also a rental assistance program, which the city is administering. The funding is actually being provided, though, through the state of Texas through their coronavirus funding. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to begin a program of providing rental assistance to those who are impacted by the coronavirus pandemic as well. Next slide. So just to give you a little bit of detail on those programs, under the public service activity, we have a transportation assistance program. This year's funding began October 1 of 2020, and it runs through September 30th of 2021. Under that program, participants who are low and moderate income can receive up to $100 per month in order to transport them to essential services like doctor's visits, hospital care, and other types of activities. The program functions with a fare card where the individual is able to contact Yellow Cab, request taxi cab service, and each month they're given an allocation of $100 per month for them to reach their destination for essential services. We have about 50 participants in that particular program. A new program that we've introduced, which will occur in September of this year, will be a mental health care education and service type forum in which seniors, youth, and other individuals will be invited to participate and access both mental health care education and also services that are available to the community for mental health. Our two housing programs were introduced for the first time this year. Our down payment and closing cost assistance program actually launched in late March of this year. It provides up to $10,000 to eligible first-time home buyers who are low and moderate income to purchase their first home. That $10,000 can be used for down payment and closing cost assistance. We also are launching, hopefully by July of this year, our first housing rehabilitation program. It will provide up to $5,000 in a forgivable loan to qualified home owners who have an emergency repair that needs to be addressed. Those will be things like electrical, plumbing, and other types of emergencies that threaten either the life and safety or threaten even their ability to continue to be able to inhabit the home that they're currently living in. In both the emergency repair housing rehabilitation program and the housing assistance to first-time homebuyers, both of those programs are forgivable loans. So once you qualify, in the case of the down payment assistance program, as long as you remain in the home as your personal residence, it will be forgiven over time. And if you apply and receive the housing rehabilitation funds, the same thing occurs as long as you remain in the home as your principal residence. That funding will be forgiven. The administration covers our planning, our program administration, our application to HUD for the HUD grant, and then all of our reporting and monitoring that occurs. So our total allocation that we're functioning under currently is $310,782. We would anticipate a similar funding level for next year, which will start October 1st of 2021. So this process and tonight's briefing is designed to give you an opportunity to give us input as to, one, whether or not these particular programs are programs that are benefiting the public and those persons who are eligible, as well as any other priority needs or activities that you'd like considered by the council, by the city council, under next year's programming. Next slide. So tonight, what we'd like to do is open the opportunity for those who are participating to provide us with any input that you have, both on any priority needs that you think should be considered by the City Council, as well as programs or activities that you'd like to see funded. I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly, and Kimberly is going to give you some information both on providing your input, but also how you can participate in a survey.
All right, thank you, James, for that presentation. As James mentioned, we do have an online survey. It's our 2021 Priority Needs Survey This survey is actually on the city's website. You can go to the city's website, and at the top of the burgundy banner, under Community, you would need to click Community Development Block Grants. That will take you to our CDBG webpage. You scroll down to the middle of the page, and the first link you will see is a link to that online survey that James just referenced. We will also have hard copies here at our Action Center where individuals can fill it out. The only thing we ask is that once you fill it out, you return it to the Action Center, and then we can upload that survey so that it is included with the overall recommendations. But that will be here at the Action Center, and it will also is online on the city's website. In addition, we are planning, if anyone has missed tonight's virtual meeting, we plan to have a second town hall that will take place Friday, July 9th. This town hall will be in person at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. here at the City Council chambers. We're also planning another community town hall that will probably be at one of our rec centers. Please stay tuned for dates and times for that next meeting, but it will probably take place the second week of July. Other than that, James, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, I believe we have one question that I see. The question is, how many participants are currently participating in the down payment housing program? As I indicated earlier, the program, we first announced the program in late March of this year, and we've been providing output to the public in terms of the program and the program opportunity, and working with realtors within our community and the banking community to bring us applicants that are interested in participating in the program. Thus far, we don't have any participants that have been committed to the program. It's a three-step process. The applicant will first identify a home that they're interested in purchasing, and they will be pre-qualified for the funding. They'll have to complete a mandatory home buyer counseling program, and then once they actually select the home and has the home under contract, they will submit their final application, and then the city, once the city approves them based on their income, the funding will be provided at closing. So the process will be the typical process that one would follow for buying a home, with the exception of when they get to the closing of the home, the funding from the city will be provided directly at the closing table for them to purchase the home. We anticipate, based on our interaction with realtors and bankers, that from start to finish, it could be up to about 90 days before we start to actually see persons who have actually identified a home and are at the point where they are approved by their lender, and we can start providing the funds. So at this moment, all of the funding, the $102,000 that we have available, is still uncommitted, but we've had a number of inquiries, so we know that both realtors, individuals, and the banking community are currently working, so we're hoping that we'll begin to see an influx within that 90-day time frame of persons who will actually be submitting their applications. So we're still getting the word out, and we would encourage you that if you're a potential first-time home buyer to contact the city so that we can provide you with any information. Most of the realtors in the community and the banking community have that information as well, so you can also feel free to contact your real estate agent or your lender of choice, and they will give you further directions as to how you can participate in the program as well.
Okay, at this time, we have a number of attendees. I don't see any comments or hands raised, but we certainly like to open it up if there are any additional questions from our attendees. All right, well, it does not look like we have any hands raised or any other comments. Think you answered that one, James. The only thing I'd like to add is that we do have brochures that provide a quick overview of the requirements and how the program is based for the first-time home buyers program. Those brochures are also here at the city. They're also at the Action Center. And should anyone have any questions about any of the programs that James mentioned that are covered under the CDBG programs, or have questions about the online survey or any of the upcoming town halls, please do not hesitate to contact me. My direct dial is 972-230-9690. And I can also be reached via email at kgarduno@desototexas.gov. All right. Okay. Well, I think that's it. James, you have anything else? James, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you have anything else?
Hello?
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead.
No, nothing else. I'd like to thank everyone for participating tonight. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us and let us know.
All right. And we'll record, just one last thing, we will record this session to post on our CDBG website as well. All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of our attendees and participants. Have a great evening.